He's not your son. Get the test if it makes you feel like a man. That line didn't come during a fight. It wasn't screamed or spat through gritted teeth. No, it came with a sip of Cabernet and a giggle, like it was a punchline to some cruel private joke I was never let in on. We were having steak. She made it rare, just the way I liked, probably because her boss liked it that way too. Our son, Nate, was across the table scrolling on his phone, half listening. He blinked up at her, then at me, like he missed the setup and wasn't sure if he should laugh along. I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. I just wiped my mouth with the napkin, nodded, and said, huh. Then I asked Nate about his science project like nothing happened. But something had. Something cracked. Not a big crack. Not yet. More like the first brittle sound a windshield makes before it spiderwebs. She kept sipping wine, smiling to herself. That night, I lay next to her in bed, pretending to sleep while she scrolled through Instagram reels of women giving empowerment tips in clickbait makeup. Her phone glowed in the dark like a lighthouse for narcissists. She had no idea I was replaying her line in my head, over and over. The way her tone didn't match the content. The way her eyes didn't meet mine after. The way she didn't clarify or laugh it off. Just moved on. Like a person who knew something. Like someone who didn't think I'd actually do anything. So the next morning, I dropped Nate off at school, drove to work, parked in the lot, and sat in my car with my coffee. I didn't go in. Instead, I pulled up a lab's website. Booked a paternity test. I need a cheek swab from him. No big deal. He hated doctors, but liked gadgets, so I told him it was for a 3D printing study his school was doing. He shrugged and did it. The results took 5 business days. In those 5 days, I didn't accuse her. Didn't rage. Didn't give her the satisfaction of a dramatic scene. I mowed the lawn. I fixed the cabinet hinge she'd been nagging about. I even picked up her dry cleaning, pretending like her world hadn't just started the countdown to detonation. She thought I was sulking. She smirked a little more that week. Told her sister on speaker that Mark's been sensitive lately, like I was some moody teenager, not the man who'd paid for every single one of her degrees. The one who coached baseball for her son. The man who held her mother's hand while she died in our guest room because her real kids couldn't be bothered. But you know what they say. Still waters run silent until they hit concrete. By Wednesday, I had the envelope in my hand. I didn't open it in the car. I didn't want to look like one of those reality show idiots holding Maury-style drama in a Walgreens parking lot. I waited until I got home. Alone. Calm. The numbers were as clean and brutal as a guillotine. Probability of paternity, 0%. That was it. 16 years of diapers, tutoring, ER visits, freezing football games, nights I stayed up building model volcanoes because she was too tired from work. It all dissolved into that decimal. 0.00. Like I was some placeholder in a life someone else secretly authored. But here's the thing about finding the truth. It doesn't hurt. Not really. Not if you know what to do with it. So I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I didn't even pour a drink. I made a folder. In it, I put the test results. A scanned copy of Nate's birth certificate. And something else. Something I'd been sitting on without realizing it. A photo from 2 years ago at a neighborhood barbecue. Her boss had stopped by with his family. In the photo, his son is standing next to mine. Same jawline, same crooked smile, same cowlick that no barber could tame. They even held their sodas the same weird way, with the thumb on top like it was a beer can. It should have felt like heartbreak, but it didn't. It felt like clarity, like a puzzle clicking into place. That was the night I knew. This wasn't just an affair. This was choreographed. Years of lies. Gaslighting. Probably inside jokes between them while I sat there grilling ribs like an idiot. So I made a second folder, this one digital. Labeled it custody and cause. And if you've made it this far into the story, you're probably one of the 90% of folks who listen but never subscribe. Go ahead, hit that button. It lets my team know you're paying attention. And trust me, they work overtime making sure stories like this don't pull any punches. Anyway, that was day 1. She thought the joke at dinner landed. She had no idea it triggered something she'd never be able to walk back. The email came in at 9:41 a.m. Subject line, paternity results available. I stared at it for 5 minutes before clicking. It was one of those cold clinical PDFs. No drama, no human voice. Just sterile numbers and a percentage. Probability of paternity, 0%. I read it once. Then again. Then a third time, like maybe if I squinted, a decimal might move. It didn't. I didn't punch a wall. Didn't scream. I didn't even shut the laptop. I just sat back and stared at the screen, listening to the soft hum of the office printer across the hallway like it was the countdown clock on a bomb I'd already disarmed. It's strange what disgust can feel like when it's clean. Not raw or noisy, but precise. Like someone slid a knife between my ribs while I was too busy making them dinner. I got up, walked to the printer, hit print on the report. Then I opened the home cabinet, the one we kept all the important documents in: birth certificates, insurance, immunizations. I found Nate's birth certificate buried under a copy of our wedding vows she insisted we frame but never hung. I scanned it. Then I opened my phone and scrolled until I found the photo. The one I'd taken at the corporate family picnic last year. I remembered it because it was the only picture Nate didn't scowl in. He was standing next to another boy, both holding snow cones, grinning like idiots. That other boy? Her boss's son, born just a month after Nate. I zoomed in. Same slouch. Same hairline. Even the same weird left ear dip. They look like twins born to different wives. You know what that does to a man? When you realize you've been the background character in your own life. That the kid you poured everything into shares nothing with you except your last name. Borrowed, not earned. I printed that photo too. 3 pages. Test result. Birth certificate. Photo. I slid them into a manila envelope, sealed it, labeled it for later. Then I started a list. Not a revenge list. Not a kill list. A facts list. Dates of her retreats. Times she claimed she was working late. Odd calendar entries like off-site strategy and brand realignment that had never once shown up on a pay stub or performance report. I noticed a pattern right away. The 2 months before Nate was born were filled with corporate travel. Aspen, Denver, San Diego. She always came back smelling like hotel soap. Funny how those details don't matter at the time. You trust. You assume. You buy the story because it's easier than knowing. But once the lens shifts, everything looks staged. There's a photo of us from around that same time, framed on the hallway wall. She's pregnant. I'm holding her belly. We look happy. Content. Except her smile in that shot. It's for someone behind the camera. It hit me then. She didn't just cheat. She curated it. She designed the lie like a campaign. Let me raise a child that looked just enough like her to pass. Let me build the home, pay the tuition, do the school drop-offs while she played queen with 2 kings on the board. And I wasn't even the backup. I was the cover story. I didn't sleep that night. But I didn't pace, either. I organized. I started making copies. Created a new cloud folder under a blank Gmail account. Every document backed up twice, locally and off-site. I encrypted the folder and gave it a name she'd never suspect. Tax Docs 2011. Just boring enough to stay invisible. Then I made my first real decision. I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. No yelling. No accusations. No dramatic showdown in the kitchen with a folder full of DNA betrayal. I'd wait. I'd let the rope get longer. Let her tell more lies. Dig the hole deeper. Let her look me in the eye and say Nate looks just like my brother. Let her complain about how distant I've been lately, like I'm just going through some middle-aged phase and not unearthing a truth so monstrous it could hollow a man. Because here's the thing. When someone plays a long game against you, you don't flip the board. You become the board. And I was just getting started. The phone call to the law firm wasn't impulsive. I had their number saved 2 years ago when a friend from work went through a quiet divorce and said, if you ever need someone who handles things clean, discreet, and surgical, call this guy. I never thought I'd use it. I called from the office conference room during lunch. Everyone else was out grabbing burritos. I shut the door, lowered the blinds, and spoke softly. Hi, I'd like to set up a consult. No, not urgent. Not loud. Just necessary. They gave me a Tuesday slot. 10 a.m. First appointment of the day. The receptionist asked if I preferred coffee or tea during meetings. It was so polite I almost laughed. Then I made the second call. This one made my palms sweat. Private investigator. Not some cartoon trench coat with binoculars, either. This guy came recommended by a corporate risk consultant I'd met during a vendor audit. He specialized in digital trails, financial forensics, and discrete patterns of behavior. I told him I wasn't after photos in cars or lipstick on collars. I wanted timestamps, hotel logs, calendar overlap, corporate card expenses, anything that connected her to him the year my son was conceived. He said, you're not the first guy to ask that, but you might be the calmest. I replied, I'm not angry. Yet. I'm just documenting. 3 days passed. I kept things normal at home, on purpose. Made dinner, watched TV, asked her about her latest HR project, and listened to her ramble about conflict resolution seminars, like she actually gave a damn about employees who weren't flirting with her in glass-walled offices. She even kissed me on the cheek Tuesday night. Said, you're being sweet lately. I like it when you're not so stiff. I almost said, And I like it when you don't lie with your eyes. But I didn't. Just smiled and wiped the kiss away when she turned. Thursday at noon, I got the email from the investigator. Subject line, deliverables enclosed. I opened the folder. 2 retreats, Aspen and Lake Tahoe, February and April of the same year. Her boss had signed into both locations using the company card. She had 2, but listed under training coordinator. Funny, she'd always said the Aspen trip was just girls, and that Tahoe was an HR conference with breakout sessions. He attached PDFs of hotel logs. Their rooms were adjacent in both locations. Not suspicious on its own, but then there was the meal service. Room service for 2. 2 entrees, 2 wines, 1 room number. Repeated 3 nights in a row. She told me she hated wine. Said it gave her headaches. The investigator even sent over a freeze frame of a digital check-in log. Timestamped 11:16 p.m. Her key card used to enter his room. The digital record had her name. No ambiguity. She never came back out until 7:42 the next morning. That timestamp. April 14th. 9 months before Nate's birth. I sat there staring at the screen, phone in hand. Not shaking. Not crying. Just processing. The story she fed me all those years ago was that the pregnancy was a surprise, a miracle after a rough patch. I remembered the tearful moment she told me. The way she placed my hand on her belly as if it were holy. Like she was giving me something. A gift. But it wasn't a gift. It was a repackaged mistake. A PR move with prenatal vitamins. And I was the dumbass holding the ribbon. The PI didn't editorialize. Just said, there's more I can pull. I need clearance to run her corporate cards. You want me to keep digging? I said yes. And that's when it shifted. My curiosity solidified into strategy. This wasn't about punishing her anymore. It was about positioning myself. For court. For custody. For control of the narrative. Because once I understood the scope of it, the coordinated trips, the timeline, the ease with which she crafted lies out of lattes and buzzwords, I realized she wasn't just unfaithful. She was methodical. She didn't fall into bed with him. She climbed into it with spreadsheets. And people like that, they don't deserve confrontation. They deserve documentation. So I thanked the investigator, opened a fresh folder labeled retreat logs, and added it to my growing archive. Every file a bullet. Every receipt a knife. She thought I was sulking. No, sweetheart. I was loading. The photos came in a Dropbox link. No warning, no explanation. Just a text from the investigator. You'll want to view these alone. So I waited until the house was empty. Nate was at basketball practice. She was out with the girls again, her new excuse of choice, and honestly, when I had no interest in verifying anymore. I clicked the link and watched it load like a slow bleeding wound. 37 images. Timestamped. Geotagged. First image, a snow-covered cabin in Telluride. Expensive, secluded, the kind of place that only gets rented by executives trying to impress someone they shouldn't be seen with. Second image, her, standing by a fire pit, laughing with her chin tucked into her scarf. A scarf I recognized immediately. That one stopped me cold. She told me she'd lost it. A red and charcoal wool scarf, hand-woven from some boutique she made a big deal out of during Christmas. We'd argued about it. I remembered clearly because she accused me of being careless and said maybe I had left it at the restaurant. She never apologized. Just replaced it 2 days later with one that looked cheaper. In the photo, it was wrapped around her neck like it had never gone missing. She was holding a glass of wine, her other hand on her boss's arm. He looked comfortable. Not guilty. Not coy. Like a man who'd done this before and didn't worry about being seen. There were more. Her barefoot on a cabin deck in a hoodie that clearly wasn't hers. Navy with a company logo from a department she didn't even work in. Her boss standing behind her in the kitchen, slicing vegetables while she leaned on the counter, watching him like they'd played House 100 times already. One shot, clearly taken from a motion sensor cam above the front door, showed her walking out early morning in leggings and that hoodie, brushing snow off her boots with a hairbrush. None of it was pornographic. None of it showed anything you could point to in court and scream affair. With capital letters. But it didn't need to. It showed domesticity, familiarity, proximity, the kind of body language that only grows in secrecy. There was even a note in the metadata on one set, digital timestamp, April 16th, 10:03 a.m. She told me she was in Chicago that weekend, attending a compliance training. I remember because I covered for her when Nate got food poisoning at school and puked on my shoes. She didn't pick up her phone once that day. Said she was in sessions. Right. Session. Singular. I saved every photo. Scanned them for duplicates. Checked the timestamps. Created subfolders by trip. There were 2 main trips total. One in the spring, one in early fall. Both to Colorado. Both on company time. And both suspiciously aligned with the months she was too tired for intimacy at home. I opened the folder I'd started earlier, Custody and Cause. Dragged and dropped everything in. Then renamed the new folder. Visual Confirmations, Telluride/Twin Pines. She came home that night like nothing happened. Hugged Nate. Laughed at something on her phone. Kissed me on the cheek and asked if we could go hiking that weekend. Hiking. She hates hiking. I said sure. Sounds nice. She beamed. I watched her cross the kitchen in the leggings I'd folded yesterday, and all I could think was, how long had she been doing this dance? How many other lies had she told? How much of our life was actually mine? But even in that moment, even as grief curled inside me like a sleeping dog about to wake up starving, I didn't confront her. Because now I wasn't grieving anymore. I was measuring. Every image was weight. Every lie a tool. And I was building something precise. Not a scene. Not a shouting match. A case. And when it was time to show it to her, I wouldn't raise my voice. I'd just open the folder, point, and watch her drown in her own reflection. The email wasn't sent in anger. It wasn't typed in a rush with trembling hands or between gulps of whiskey like in some movie scene. No, it was written the same way I used to fill out annual budget reviews. Calm, methodical, and brutally impersonal. Subject, timeline clarification. Body. Hi, Dana. Apologies for reaching out this way. I believe there may be a misunderstanding involving some overlapping travel dates. Please find attached a photo and a document. The photo is from Aspen, dated February 13th, 20XX. The document is a paternity test result, dated last week. Your husband and my wife were in Aspen the same weekend. While she was pregnant. Mark. I didn't attach anything salacious. Just one photo. The one with my wife laughing next to her boss in the snow, that damn scarf wrapped around her neck like a trophy. And the paternity report, cropped and clean. I double-checked the attachments. No unnecessary words. No dramatic punctuation. Just enough truth to shatter porcelain. Then I hit send. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then stood up, stretched, and made coffee. 3 days passed. Nothing. No reply. No read receipt. No digital proof that the fuse I'd lit had found its mark. Meanwhile, life at home hummed along in its surreal, polished way. She made brunch Sunday, humming to herself like someone who'd already forgotten how to spell guilt. Nate showed me a TikTok that made no sense. The dog threw up on the rug. Life insisted on its little details. And then Monday came. I was walking out of a client meeting, phone on silent, when I saw the notification, Public Divorce Filing, Dana Whitmore vs. Charles Whitmore. Filed 9:06 a.m. I clicked through the docket like it was the morning news. Filed by her attorney directly in state court. Grounds: irreconcilable differences, with preliminary allegations of marital misconduct. She didn't message me, didn't call, didn't ask questions. That silence told me everything. Dana wasn't a fool. She didn't need 20 more emails to draw the line between our spouses. She just needed that one image. The one her husband probably swore never existed. The one that showed mine in a sweater he likely bought, leaning into her husband's chest like they shared a mortgage. The thing about people like Dana is, once they know, they move. They don't scream. They don't threaten. They act. I refreshed the docket twice that day, watching new entries pop up. Emergency hearing scheduled. Temporary support request. Asset freeze notice. All moving faster than most divorces ever do. That told me something else. She'd suspected. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to be ready. Meanwhile, my wife was in our kitchen complaining about oat milk and work politics. Said she was exhausted from covering for a coworker on maternity leave. The irony nearly made me choke on my coffee. I opened my laptop in the den and quietly updated my archive. New folder, Collateral Echo, Dana Whitmore. I dragged in screenshots of the filing, cross-referenced the retreat dates again, and made a note in the margins. Dominoes falling externally. No intervention required. That was the first time it really settled in. This wasn't about hurting her anymore, or even exposing her. It was about disconnecting her from every illusion of control she thought she had. Because cheaters always assume they're the smartest one in the room. They think the damage is contained, that the web they spin only exists in the dark. What they don't realize is how far the light can travel once you crack the door. And now, that light was moving, across boardrooms, marriages, and bank accounts. And I didn't have to scream. All I had to do was show one person the truth and let her detonate it herself. She left on Friday morning with a suitcase and a lie. Said she was headed to Atlanta for a corporate conference. Something about leadership modules and keynote speakers. Even dropped a name she thought I'd recognize. Some industry hack who sells overpriced personality tests repackaged as executive training. I nodded like it made sense. She kissed Nate on the forehead, made sure I saw her pack her laptop, and reminded me to text if anything comes up. I said, of course. And the second her Uber disappeared down the street, I moved. First call, my lawyer. We'd gone over the prenup months ago, back when all this started to shift from heartbreak into blueprint. Buried deep in the agreement, Clause 12C. In the event of proven marital fraud or misrepresentation regarding paternity, joint property status reverts to original individual ownership. When we signed it, she laughed and said it sounded like a paranoid clause from some TV show. Well, that TV show just got renewed for a final season, with a much darker ending. Within 3 hours, her name was removed from the deed to the house. Just like that. All it took was the DNA results, the time-stamped emails, and a whisper of the case law precedent my lawyer had on standby. Second move, the accounts. We had one joint checking, one savings. Nothing massive, but enough to matter. I initiated a transfer of the funds, legally, to a new trust in my name only, protected under spousal fraud provisions. The trust was structured around Nate's needs: tuition, health, legal. Everything clean. Everything documented. If she wanted to contest it later, she'd have to argue, under oath, why a man raising a child not biologically his, without knowledge or consent, was obligated to keep her financially propped up. Good luck spinning that with a straight face. Then, the third move, the one that stung the most, but had to happen. Custody review. I scheduled the consult. Filed under emergency grounds. Misrepresentation of paternity and manipulation of parental identity. It wasn't about revenge. I wasn't even looking to sever ties between Nate and his mother. But I was making sure that if she tried to pull the we'll co-parent like adults card after the bomb went off, the court already had my receipts in hand. By Saturday morning, all 3 operations were finalized. Not theoretical, not pending. Finalized. I even changed the house alarm codes and revoked her access to the shared Dropbox. Then I went upstairs to her home office. She had one of those converted sunrooms she called her inspiration space. Books arranged by color, fake succulents she insisted were real, a corkboard filled with sticky notes that said things like "lead with light" and "strong women fix crowns." I locked the door, changed the Wi-Fi password while I was at it, and when I was done, I sat in the kitchen, made myself a sandwich, and watched a home improvement show on mute like it was the most normal day in the world. Nate got back from his friend's house around 6. I helped him with homework. We made microwave popcorn and watched a movie. He didn't notice anything had changed. And that was the goal. Because I wasn't about to turn this into a house of yelling. I wasn't going to let her lies corrupt the calm. I was going to preserve it. By the time Sunday night rolled around, I'd washed the dishes, set the alarm, and even left a little bouquet of sunflowers in the kitchen, her favorite. She walked in around 9:30, still in heels, still playing the role. Dropped her bag, kicked off her shoes, and gave me that smile she reserved for moments when she needed to pre-soften something. Long weekend, she said, heading toward her office. She tried the doorknob. Locked. She frowned, rattled it. Did you lock my office? I sipped my tea. Nope. Just changed the locks. She turned. Excuse me. I shrugged. Trust issue. Nothing major. That was the moment something shifted in her eyes. Just the flicker of a question she didn't want to ask. Her instincts finally catching up to the game she didn't realize she was losing. She stared at me, half laughing. What's going on? I looked back at her, steady. Let's just say while you were out learning about leadership, I was busy applying it. She didn't speak. Just stood there, barefoot on the tile, realizing the locks weren't the only thing that had changed. The house felt different now, because it wasn't hers anymore. Monday morning hit like a guillotine, but not for me. I was at home, sipping a fresh mug of black coffee, watching Nate eat cereal like it was any other week. Calm, steady, detached. Meanwhile, across town, the man who helped script the biggest betrayal of my life was walking into his own ambush, tailor-made with a signature he never saw coming. It started at 8:47 a.m. Charles Whitmore, Executive VP of Strategic Operations, revered by his staff for decisive leadership and charisma under pressure, was stopped at the front desk of his own office. Security handed him a white envelope. Not the usual interoffice memo or vendor contract. It was thick, legal weight paper, stamped from a high-tier family law firm with a reputation for high-net-worth divorces. Inside, summons and complaint for divorce. Filed by Dana Whitmore. He was being sued. publicly, strategically, and worse, preparedly. But the real show was waiting in conference room B. He walked in, confused, envelope still in hand. HR had told him there was a compliance matter that needed urgent review. Said outside counsel would be joining. He probably expected a boring policy update. What he got was a quiet room, 2 people seated. To his left, Dana's attorney, cold, clinical, former prosecutor eyes. To his right, my divorce lawyer. No introductions. Just a manila folder slid across the table like a trapdoor opening. He flipped it open. First photo, my wife in the cabin, scarf looped loose, wine glass in hand. Second, a hotel log from Telluride with both their names checked in under executive training. Third, the paternity results. Bolded, underlined, highlighted. Probability of paternity, 0%. Attached was a 1-paragraph affidavit from the lab's director and a calendar breakdown of every trip my wife took overlapping with his known corporate travel. The file ended with a single email, an internal one he sent to his assistant about booking Aspen again. Same layout, less obvious this time. He looked up, lips pale. Dana's attorney leaned forward and said, "You have 10 minutes. After that, we go to court." My lawyer didn't speak, just folded his hands and watched him crumble. Back at home, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, curious. "Why the hell is your divorce attorney sitting in my office?" The voice barked. I didn't respond right away. Just let the silence do what it does best, expose everything. "Charles," I said calmly, "you've got a lot of questions, but I'm only going to give you one answer." He waited. "You thought this was about her." "It's not." He paused. "Then what the hell is this about?" I smiled, not that he could see it. "It's about systems, Charles. You created one. I just learned how to use it better than you." He went quiet. You could hear the moment it sank in. This wasn't a man flying off the handle over a betrayal. This was a man strategizing every beat of a takedown. And Charles, who had always thrived on control, had just realized he wasn't the architect anymore. "You planned this," he finally said. "No," I replied. "You did. I just finished your outline." He hung up. 10 minutes later, my lawyer texted me. He folded. No response to the filing. Dana's team will proceed uncontested. That meant full asset audit, public court record, discovery phase. And trust me, there was plenty to discover. The funniest part? He still had to go back to his office afterward, sit in front of his employees, pretend he hadn't just been handed a printed playbook of his worst secrets. Reputation is a fragile currency in executive circles. It doesn't explode. It erodes, quietly, effectively, and with a precision that HR can't fix. And I didn't have to leak a thing. All I did was send 2 attorneys to a room and let proof do the talking. She came in like a storm that lost the map. Hair wild, jacket half off, keys dropped somewhere between the car and the hallway. Her heels were still on, but barely. One strap hanging, the other unbuckled. I was sitting in the den, calm, reading a report I'd already memorized 3 hours ago just to pass the time. She didn't greet me, didn't ask how my day was. She stood in the doorway, eyes bloodshot from what I assumed was a panic cry behind the wheel, and screamed. "What the hell did you do?" I didn't look up, just reached to my right, picked up the folder I'd labeled disclosures, full, and held it out like I was offering her a menu. She didn't take it. She stared like she expected me to explain something, like I owed her a monologue. I set the folder down on the coffee table instead, gently, right on top of the Pottery Barn catalog she'd circled months ago. She wanted new bar stools. Funny, that catalog would outlast her place in this house. She finally walked over and opened it. Page 1, the paternity test. Page 2, the first hotel log. Page 3, a side-by-side of Nate and her boss's son, taken 2 summers ago at a pool party she swore she didn't want to attend. Turns out, she had other reasons to be distracted that day. Page 4 and beyond. Screenshots of messages she thought she deleted. Her travel itinerary pulled from synced cloud data. Company records. Card statements. TSA pre-check logs. Even a calendar invite she once claimed didn't exist. It did. I'd printed it on ivory linen paper just to piss her off. She flipped, 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 and then stopped. I waited for it. Rage, denial, bargaining. Maybe that laugh she does when she's about to lie through her teeth and pretend it's just a misunderstanding. Instead, she sat. Just sat. Like her knees buckled beneath the weight of the evidence, and there was no floor left to stand on. "I don't understand," she whispered. I stood, walked past her toward the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water. Then I came back, leaned against the entryway wall, and said, "You thought I'd scream. You thought I'd throw things. You thought I'd cry, beg, maybe get drunk and disappear for a weekend. She didn't respond. I nodded at the folder. You made a mess. I just made sure the paperwork was clean. Her hand went to her mouth, fingers trembling. She wasn't crying. Not yet. Her eyes were darting now, connecting dots, realizing timelines. Probably even remembering phrases she thought were harmless at the time. Remembering the joke at dinner. The scarf. The weekends she said she was too tired to call. Realizing I hadn't been blind. I'd just been patient. That's when the collapse started. Not loud. Not theatrical. Just slumped shoulders. A breath that caught in her chest and refused to come out. You hacked my email? No, I said. You used our shared Wi-Fi. And your password was our anniversary. I remembered it. You clearly didn't. She winced like I'd slapped her, but I hadn't touched her. And I wouldn't. Not now. She closed the folder halfway, as if that might shut the contents inside, might make it not real. I didn't mean for it to get this far. That line. That pathetic, wheezing, stupid line. I took one slow step forward, not to threaten, just to correct. It didn't get this far. You brought it here. One reservation at a time. One lie at a time. One late night with someone else's husband at a time. Silence. Her face had gone white, except for the eyes, red, tired, drowning. You're destroying everything, she whispered. No, I said. I'm just documenting the demolition. You were the architect. She finally broke then. Hands in her lap, head down, trying not to cry but failing with every breath. The sound was small. Almost nothing. The sound of someone watching the trapdoor swing open beneath them and realizing they'd pulled the lever themselves. I left her there, in the den, next to a folder she couldn't close and a life she'd made unlivable. Dinner was in the oven. Nate was upstairs, headphones on, oblivious to the quiet extinction of our marriage one floor below. And as I walked away, her voice, small, shaking, followed. Can we talk about this? I didn't stop, didn't turn, just said, that's what the last 16 years were for. This is the part where we don't talk. And then I shut the kitchen door behind me. Courtrooms have their own kind of silence. It's not the quiet of peace or reflection. It's clinical, procedural, like a vacuum waiting to be filled with consequences. She walked in wearing a navy dress I hadn't seen in years, probably saved for interviews and manipulations. Her hair was pinned back too tight. Her posture screamed reasonable woman wronged by circumstances. But her eyes gave her away. Red at the edges. Sleepless. Like someone who rehearsed a speech only to realize the audience came with a transcript. Her attorney, some boutique firm darling with a resume full of TED Talks and self-righteous blog posts, stood beside her, clutching a binder too clean to be useful. He tried to reach out the week before with a vague settlement offer. We didn't respond. The bailiff called us in. Family court, Division C. No jury. Just the judge, a clerk, a court reporter, and the quiet air of judgment sharpened over years of domestic disaster. My lawyer stood tall, calm. He didn't wear flashy suits. Just a charcoal one. No cufflinks. But the documents he carried? Surgical. The judge, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, bored until she wasn't, called the session to order. Open the file. Read the headers. When she reached the paternity results, she stopped reading aloud. She read them silently. Twice. Then she looked up over her glasses and said, flatly, Counselor, this report is current? My lawyer nodded. Last month, Your Honor. Verified by 2 independent labs. She turned to the opposing counsel. And your client confirms she never disclosed this to her husband? The other lawyer tried to speak, but she raised a hand. Let me rephrase. Did she ever inform him that there was a possibility the child was not his, biologically? No answer. Silence. The judge exhaled once, then said the words I'd memorized in statutes, but never thought I'd hear spoken. This court views the deliberate concealment of paternity as fraud against the marital estate. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. My ex. Yes. I'd already stopped thinking of her by name. Shifted in her seat like the cushion had turned to stone. Her lawyer leaned over, whispered something, probably advising her to keep quiet. But the damage had already been admitted, in omission. Then came the ruling. Custody? Granted to me. Sole legal and residential. She'd get visitation. Supervised, pending a counselor's report. Assets? We had a prenup, sure. But the clause regarding fraud had been vague, until the judge invoked intent to mislead under the guise of familial trust. Split was adjusted. 90 out of 10. Not 50/50ths. Not even 70/30ths. 90. To me. 10. To the woman who once told her friends at brunch that men just don't understand emotional labor. The judge stood. Gavel didn't even come down. Just a nod to the clerk and a muttered adjourned. I didn't look at her as I walked out. Didn't give her the courtesy of eye contact. She didn't deserve to read my face. Not after years of reading my paychecks and calling it partnership. But I could feel her behind me. Small, sunken, held together by a thread of pride, and a lawyer too embarrassed to make her linger. Out in the hallway, people moved like nothing had happened. Security guards laughed at something on a phone. A paralegal spilled coffee and cursed. The court kept spinning. I stood by the exit doors, letting the cool draft hit my face. I thought about saying something poetic. Thought about turning back and leaving her with a final line. A cinematic gut punch. But some people don't deserve closure. They deserve silence. So I just left. Walked into the parking lot. Unlocked my car. Drove home to a house that was finally mine. She would later text. Of course she would. Long paragraphs. Emotional appeals. Passive-aggressive swipes wrapped in soft wording like, I just want to be heard. I didn't respond. Because court had already spoken, and I had nothing left to prove. It started, fittingly, on a Monday. A week had passed since the court hearing. My house was quiet again. Papers were filed. Custody established. Assets frozen. And she, well, she'd gone underground. Deleted social media. Muted group chats. The usual ritual of public self-erasure once the mask cracks and the audience starts whispering. But the real finale was still waiting. Not in our home. Not in court. In a glass-paneled boardroom with espresso machines and million-dollar deals printed in Helvetica. Whitmore Enterprises had always prided itself on integrity-first culture. Their leadership page featured quotes about ethics and empowerment, written by PR interns and endorsed by men who cheated on their wives between seminars on servant leadership. And now, Charles Whitmore, the man behind the slogan, was being summoned to a 9 a.m. meeting with the very board he once chaired. It wasn't a surprise. Rumors had been swirling for days. Not about the affair, necessarily, but about the optics. An executive divorce. Legal exposure. Whispered phrases like HR liability and improper disclosures. One board member's wife was reportedly friends with Dana, and Dana, bless her, had been talking. So when Charles walked into that room, he knew the terrain had shifted. The chairs were filled. The faces unreadable. His assistant wasn't even there. The general counsel handed him a sheet. A single line at the top. Request for executive transition. Effective immediately. He stared at it. Didn't argue. Just nodded once. As if he finally understood the trap he'd walked into wasn't set in court. It was set in reputation, and he'd lost the leverage to fake his way through it. They gave him 2 hours to vacate. In his office, the walls still had framed awards. Posed photos from company retreats. A golf trophy he hadn't won fairly. He began packing them, slowly, like each item was evidence of a life unraveling. But there was one thing on his desk he hadn't left there. An envelope. Unmarked. Cream-colored. No postage. Inside, a printed resignation letter. Not his. Hers. My wife's name signed at the bottom. Dated. Addressed to the board of directors. The language was corporate, precise. The kind of letter you write when you don't want to beg, but you know begging is coming. And in the top right corner, in faint pencil, was the name of my attorney. Charles stared at it for a long time. The betrayal wasn't in the letter. It was in how easily I'd gotten it. How quiet the move had been. No press. No leaks. Just an envelope. Waiting. He picked up his phone. Dial my number. I was in the driveway, watching Nate shoot hoops, when it rang. I saw the name. I answered. There was a pause. Not tension. Just surrender. I underestimated you, he said. I let that hang. Then replied, steady. I didn't do anything, Charles. You just married the wrong kind of silence. Click. No goodbye. No threats. No pleading. Just the sound of a man realizing the empire he helped build had no walls. No moat. No allies. Because here's the truth. You can plan affairs with hotel keys and excuses. You can lie to spouses, to kids, to colleagues. You can even lie to yourself. But you can't lie to outcomes. And when silence turns strategic, when the man you mocked for being too passive learns how to weaponize stillness, there's no fire alarm loud enough to stop the burn. So yes, he packed his box. Yes, she lost the house, the custody, the version of herself she curated with hashtags and filtered brunch photos. And yes, I walked away. Not angry, not vindicated, just done. And in that kind of ending, there are no credits, just consequences.